Republicans hold 54 Senate seats, but maybe not for long. Forget the presidential race for a moment as we ask, can Republicans win the battle for the upper house of Congress? I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this is Right Angle. Like all of them, this one is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Well, men, the way political predictor Larry Sabato sees it, Senate contests in Indiana, Nevada, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida, and New Hampshire look like toss-ups. Illinois and Wisconsin lean Democratic, while Arizona, Missouri, and North Carolina lean Republican. GOP incumbents like John McCain, Rob Portman, Pat Toomey, Kelly Ayotte, and Marco Rubio could possibly fall. Now, Stephen Green, how important are these Senate contests? And if you were a betting man, would you put your money on a Republican surge or a retreat?
Oh boy, these Senate contests could not be more important. I spent must have been 800 or 1,000 words at a column at Vodka Planet a couple of weeks ago saying no matter what you think about Donald Trump, if you're never Trump, if you're never Hillary, if you're sometimes Trump, if you're voting for Gary Johnson, whatever it is you're doing, these Senate races are so important. You've got to show up at your polling place at Election Day and vote for that Republican senator, no matter what. And it really doesn't even matter because the Senate has got to not act as a rubber stamp for the kind of nominees that Hillary Clinton once is dying, is drooling, is desperate to send to the Supreme Court. It's got to be done. I can't stress this enough. I don't care where you are on the political spectrum, but single-party government is just inherently bad and corrupt if it goes on long enough. And when you've got Hillary Clinton sitting at the top of it, you gotta nip that thing in the bud. You can't give her anything that she wants, especially something as important as a Supreme Court nominee or two or three. That said, who knows? It was just a couple of weeks ago that the smart money was on the Democrats having a one, maybe a two-seat majority, and the words I'm about to speak make me physically ill. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. But news came out. We're recording this on Tuesday. News came out this morning that the DSCC, that's the Democrat Senate committee, has canceled their ad buys for what's his name in Ohio, and so have the Republicans, because it looks like the Republican, I think that's Portman, looks to be secure in his seat. So that's maybe one safe seat. Rubio, I think, is going to pull this out. It's really going to depend on how low Donald Trump sinks in the polls, or if he can stabilize. Typically speaking, in a presidential election year, the party as a whole doesn't outperform, never has outperformed the presidential contender by more than 5 points. So if candidate X got 55 points margin of victory in his congressional race 2 years ago, and Donald Trump gets 47%, then he's not going to do better than 52% this time around. So the important thing is not to let Trump sink below about 47%. If he can, and that's in the head-to-head. Forget the four-way race with the Greens and Libertarians. Head-to-head, as long as Trump can be at 47 or above, the GOP should keep the Senate. If he sinks below 47, it could be 50-50. And if he sinks anywhere to 44, 45, then it's a Democratic Senate. And if he sinks to 40, which he has been in some polls, then you may be looking as well at a Democrat-controlled House, a Democrat-controlled Senate, and a Democrat-controlled White House for the first time since 2009. And I think we remember all the trillions of dollars that ended up flushing down the toilet.
And some people don't believe in hell. Steve, can I ask you a follow-up question?
Well, I believe in hell on earth. I cover politics for a living.
Let me ask you a follow-up to drill down on that number a little bit. The idea that the party as a whole doesn't outperform the presidential candidate by more than 5 points. When you say the party as a whole, you mean nationwide, or do you mean in any individual race across the country?
In any individual race in the country. The president has a candidate is going to do no more than about 5 points better than the presidential contender, but that's based on his previous results as well.
Okay, well, past results are no guarantee of future performance.
Exactly. And you know what? I'd also like to add that this time around that we may break that rule for the first time ever, because I think the threat of President Clinton is going to involve a lot more, or could involve a lot more ticket splitting than we usually see.
Well, Bill Whittle, with the aforementioned sideshow of Clinton versus Trump sucking up every dram of public attention, what's the best strategy for Republicans, say running for Senate, to achieve a supermajority, or at least to hold on to that majority in the Senate?
Let me just tell you a little bit about my predictive abilities. As I entered the University of Florida in 1979, the Gators went 10-1. They tied their third game, lost everything else. Final game of the season, we were playing Alabama, who went on to be national champions. We had a first down in the third quarter, and I thought we were going to pull it out. We lost 40-0. So with that said, Scotty, the thing I think that's interesting here is well, there's a bunch of things.
Well, and let me focus a little bit though for a second, because I'm not asking you to predict this. What I'm asking is, if you had to break through this circus-like atmosphere around Clinton and Trump, what would you do as a Senate candidate to try to get some traction, get some public attention?
I'd go negative on Hillary as hard as I could, and I would I would just make that my message and not just Trump's message. I'd get myself branded as the only person who could stop Hillary Clinton. That's exactly what I would do. When Steve was talking about, you should go out and vote Republican, I had a little twinge of something. And it wasn't like, gee, I missed the Republican Party. It was like, I can remember a time barely when you wouldn't have to say go vote for the Republican. You could vote for the guy who had the best national defense policy or the most sane economic policy. Yep. But nowadays that means Republican. And that's not a real exact, brand of honor.
Sure.
I think the main thing I want to say here is this. We saw, as you mentioned in your setup, we saw in 2009 what they can do when they have the House, the Senate, and the presidency for their progress. And, there's progress right off this cliff. So we have to maintain at least the House, at least. And the point I'm trying to make here is we've had the House since 2010. We've had the House and the Senate since we had the House since 2010, House and Senate since 2014. But we haven't done anything with it. We seem to have given him virtually everything he wants and have mostly allowed him to write executive orders around the laws that he particularly didn't win, And so what's the point of holding the House and holding the Senate if these people in the House and Senate that we send there are not going to stop these lunatics and tyrants? So it's, you do have to get out there and vote to stop these people, but also once they're elected, they have to do what that we sent them there for, and we haven't seen much of that lately, which is why Donald Trump exists, right? I mean, if I think Donald Trump was created by Mitch McConnell and John Boehner, I genuinely actually do. We watched the last 8 years of sending entire, first the House, then the Senate, to stop Barack Obama, and they wouldn't do it.
Oh, and let me add one other thing, Bill. You made me think of this. I left the Republican Party over George Bush and Karl Rove and their compassionate so-called conservatism, which is just big government on the right. But this is, and I've always been a big ticket splitter since my very first election in 1989 or 90, whenever it was. But I will tell you this right now: I am voting for the first time in my life, even though I'm not a member of the party, straight ticket Republican.
Scotty, that reminded me of one final thing. They say that you look at Trump's polls and they say that when you ask anonymously, his numbers go way up. And the only reason I wanted to bring that up is because once again, after a fourth year in a row or fourth election in a row, I'm reduced to holding on to some kind of magic talisman about the polling. You know what I mean? Yeah. I remember doing that with Romney. It's like, well, a lot of people say they don't want to come out for, no one's good. Everybody's saying they want Obama, but as much as I hate to admit it, these guys are usually right within a percentage point.
Yeah, they're pretty sharp.
Yeah, I think President Romney agrees with you on that.
Yeah, that's right.
For constitutional conservatives who are maybe thinking of sitting this one out, the fate of the Senate alone should be enough to get you to the polls. I'm not suggesting that the ballot in your state will offer another James Madison or James Wilson or Gouverneur Morris, but we're fighting a rearguard action here. If the race in your state is a shoo-in, why don't you consider contributing to a Republican candidate in a toss-up state, or even making a road trip for a weekend or a month if you're retired or independently wealthy to just do some old-fashioned door knocking. Whether we elect a progressive Democrat to the presidency or whether we elect one of her former major donors, the framers of our Constitution developed a system designed to insulate us from the passions of the mob and from the schemes of charismatic charlatans. You know, there's a lot of talk about building a wall these days. If you want to build a wall to protect the American Republic, build one around the Constitution by electing a Republican supermajority to the Senate. For Bill Whittle, Stephen Green, and the Right Angle team, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this show possible.